Ay, porque estoy enamorada de Marta, porque es parte de mi destino, porque hay algo que me trajo hasta esta película. Yo lo sé que es algo fuera de mis manos. Estoy también porque es la historia de México. Estoy también porque tengo esta grandísima oportunidad de representar a México dignamente en un personaje y en un papel que es muy digno y muy bello. Y estoy aquí también por todos los que están metidos en este proyecto, que son gente maravillosa. Estoy aquí porque Marta es México y yo también. Bueno, yo tuve la oportunidad, junto contigo, de estar en la ceremonia yo por primera vez en la Plaza San Jacinto, y uno se da cuenta que dos países tan alejados o que no podrían tener nada en común, como se ve aquí en la película, los del pelo rojo y blancos, y pues aquí la gente, mi gente es morena o no muy blanca, ¿no? Cómo coinciden en un punto tan importante como es la religión y la nobleza. Y yo creo que la nobleza de dos pueblos que están geográficamente tan lejanos y el cómo pueden luchar juntos, no solamente por una causa, sino por todas sus causas personales, cómo se llegan a fundir en esta guerra, me parece realmente grandioso. Y me gusta mucho que haya esa celebración cada año allí en la Plaza de San Jacinto, ya 150 años de que se celebra, y que se siga de alguna manera reconociendo, aunque poco, porque no mucha gente lo sabe, pues la sangre que derramaron los irlandeses por nosotros los mexicanos, y se recuerda tanto aquí como allá. Yo creo que allá se recuerda de la manera en que los mexicanos fuimos muy hospitalarios con los irlandeses y los recibimos en nuestro país, en nuestros brazos, con nuestro cariño, y pues ellos pelearon con nosotros porque hubo una fusión, una identidad, una identificación, algo, y eso es grandioso.
Una película que siempre, desde que la leí la primera vez, me gustó porque es una historia verdadera, verdadera y también parte de ella ficticia, pero es una historia sobre el batallón de San Patricio, los San Patricios, que este año además se ha celebrado los 150 años de los San Patricios en México. Es una historia que me encantó, aparte de la historia en sí propia, que no la conocía, me encantó el personaje de Cortina.
Tiene un reflejo en esta película, porque hay tanta ignorancia sobre esta guerra, ¿no?, en particular, que la gente no sabe su propia historia, tanto en México como en Estados Unidos. Y esta guerra fue importante para lo que pasó después, tanto en México como en Estados Unidos. Sí, el hecho de haber encontrado una historia tan humana, tan interesante, tan real, que además se repite en el curso de los años. Podríamos decir que son puertorriqueños que se unen al ejército norteamericano y van a pelear a Vietnam. Es la misma historia, y que de pronto, claro, se sienten segunda clase y quieren en principio solamente evadirse para encontrar su religión, y pasan por el lado enemigo, que es católico, y que les ofrece la posibilidad que ellos estaban buscando de todas maneras en los Estados Unidos. Es un hecho tan interesante y tan real, que vuelve a repetirse en el curso de la historia, que esto es lo que me ha realmente hecho doblemente interesante toda esta experiencia.
Hace siglo y medio, estos jóvenes escucharon la voz de la justicia, la voz de la dignidad y el honor, y en un acto de conciencia abandonaron las filas de un ejército invasor para sumarse a los patriotas mexicanos que hacían frente a una agresión que carecía de toda justificación. La mayoría de ellos perdió la vida con valor ejemplar en los campos de batalla de la que habían escogido como su segunda patria. Hace 150 años, aquí en San Ángel, en Mixcoac y en Tacubaya, más de 60 valientes integrantes del batallón de San Patricio fueron ejecutados como desertores en tiempo de guerra por haber obedecido su conciencia. Los 10 soldados que no recibieron la pena de muerte fueron azotados y sus rostros fueron marcados con hierro candente. Pero ninguno de ellos sufrió el oprobio con que quisieron cubrirlo sus verdugos. La horca, el látigo y el hierro hicieron de ellos mártires de los más altos ideales que entonces y ahora, en cualquier lugar de la tierra, sostienen las mujeres y los hombres de bien, la paz, la justicia, la libertad.
Actually, this war is not taught much in our history books, and this story most Americans have never heard. Riley and the Irish characters are also looking for a country, and they're looking for a democracy, and they've been through the same thing in Ireland with the British occupation. So there's an affinity, a political, intellectual affinity there too, as well, between the two of them. For example, Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, Spartacus, Ben-Hur, John Wayne's The Alamo. I think what this is a lot about is people looking for land and freedom and democracy. John Riley is an Irish immigrant, yes, but he was also a professional soldier. He's a man without a country, like the rest of them, but he's a soldier, and the army is his country, I suppose. Besides the original writer on it, I know that John Huston wrote parts of it, Sam Peckinpah wrote parts of it. It almost happened with Sam Peckinpah, but he died, and so did the project at the time. There's been other attempts to get it going since I've known about it in 10 years, but probably because it is anti-American to some degree, it just was never done. You could say, I don't know, you could almost say anything about Vietnam or Platoon. Eventually, whether it's a book or a movie, I think you have to kind of go back and look at it again. And then after a long period of time, you sometimes get a little bit more of the truth. It was not one of the most popular wars in American history. There was 11 major newspapers in the country against it. Daniel Webster, who was a huge political figure at the time, was against it. John Quincy Adams, who had already been a president, was against it. A young congressman from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln was against it. Thoreau, the writer, went to prison because he wouldn't pay his taxes to support the war. So there were mixed emotions at the time. It also had the highest desertion rate of any American war.
But what do they represent? I don't know. I suppose they represent a bunch of guys from an Irish background who were being persecuted in the US Army the same way that they've been persecuted in their own country, and who came to the basic decision that they just simply couldn't put up with it anymore. You know, that's why they got away from Ireland, was to get away from that. Found themselves in exactly the same situation and just thought, nah, no more. And so they left. They packed their bags and they went. And I suppose, I don't know, it's what one of the characters says in the film, you know, above all things to thine own self be true, quote from Shakespeare. And I suppose that's what they represent. They were true to their own sentiments, true to their own feelings, and they just went.
In Irish history, we learn nothing of the St. Pat's. In terms of Irish history, we learn about the famine, of the 1840 famine, and how basically half the Irish population was wiped out. And a lot of them escaped and came in ships to the States. These ships were called coffin ships because of the amount of people that died on board these ships. And these were guys that escaped the famine and got to the New World, America, and signed up to join the American Army thinking they'd become citizens. Ended up down here, and then they started fighting against the Mexicans. They deserted, started fighting for the Mexicans against the Americans because of injustices done to them. So basically they fled from injustice in Ireland and landed themselves in another injustice, in a situation with injustice in America. So so they escaped and then landed in the soup again, if you like. But so they just were unlucky, you know what I mean? It wasn't a good time to be around and be Irish. But the fact that they escaped the famine, and there's so few, I mean, there's so many people died, and then that they came over here and died fighting for a cause that they didn't really know anything about. They just landed themselves in it. And I think the decision was made that they had more in common with the Mexicans who the Americans were trying to invade at the time, and so they said, let's fight for these fellas, you know. They probably felt more in common with them as the underdogs, so to speak.
It's a film that's been trying to be made for a long time, and I personally have read about 4 or 5 scripts, different scripts on the subject, and so I've been aware of it, and obviously being Irish, was very interested in these characters. The Irish have been a race that have been never quite conquered. But the nature of every country is one of invasion, in the sense that new peoples come. And one has grown up with that history and become very aware of that history. So one grows up with a sort of natural rebelliousness, because these stories of rebellion are some of the best stories in the world. The struggle for the underdog to defeat the oppressor.
Benton Lacey represents the conscience of America in this piece. He is the one guy in it who thinks the San Patricios have been mistreated, who doesn't blame them for deserting, who tries to get them back throughout while he chases them through Mexico, and ends up seeing part of the American government that isn't fair.
I like the idea, the fact that it's a story that's never been done before, and it's a very dramatic period of history and dramatic episode of the Mexican-American War, and I just thought it was fun to be a part of it and be able to see how this story was being told firsthand. Well, yes, I obviously have a bit of Irish in me, and so it, yeah, that side of it is very interesting for me.
That's the movie that I've always wanted to make, ever since I can remember growing up in a bilingual society, in a bicultural society. I learned that the war, the Mexican-American War, is viewed entirely different between Mexico and the United States. The Mexicans, of course, it's much more in their heart. They feel that it was an unjust war, that it was a war that was provoked by the United States in a land grab. And of course, in the United States, it's viewed as a very successful war, because it's the one war that added a huge amount of territory to the United States. And what was interesting to me was to see this band of Irishmen that were caught in the middle. They originally fled to the United States, fleeing the famine, fleeing the British, and ended up fighting in the U.S. Army to get citizenship, and realizing that they were fighting on the wrong side, because their affinity, religion-wise, affinity to the people, to the way the people acted, was much more so with the Mexicans, who were being the victims rather than with the aggressors, and so they changed sides. And to me, that was a fantastic, dynamic story. The most important thing to me is obviously the story, and trying to tell the story that you select, and also the actors you cast. I mean, those are the two keys for it. Well, what I like to do is cast as best I can the actors that I think are going to do the part right, and then let them go with it, and just basically adjust to what I had in mind that that particular character was going to do at a particular time.